Hello everybody and welcome back. My continuation of my book reading. I am at chapter 13 of Stephen King's The Body, The Loser's Life. About a quarter of a mile further on, the tracks ran into the forest and the land ran down to a bog. The air was full of biting insects, which were about the size of airplanes, but it was cool. Wonderfully cool. We sat in the shadows of the trees to drink our cokes. We hadn't been there 5 minutes when Vern had to go off into the bushes, which causes a lot of joking when he came back. Train frighten you much, Vern? No, man. I was going to go when we got across anyway. I had to, you know. Are you sure, Vern? Come on, you guys. I did. Sincerely. Chris turned to me. What about you, Gordy? Were you frightened? No way, I said. I had a drink of my coke. Sincerely? Sincerely, man. I wasn't frightened at all. No? You weren't frightened. Teddy was looking at me carefully. No. I was a long way past fright. I was into terror. They laughed for a long time at that. When we lay back, not joking anymore, just drinking our cokes and being quiet. My body felt warm and peaceful. I was alive and glad to be. I felt affectionate towards everyone and everything around me. It was a very special feeling. After a while, Chris stood up. Let's do some walking, he said. It was still bright daylight and the sky was a hot, steely blue. But our shadows were beginning to grow longer. I remember that when I was young. September days always seemed to end much too soon and catch me by surprise. It was as if something inside my heart expected it always to be June, with daylight hanging softly in the sky until almost 9:30. What time is it, Gordy? Chris asked. I looked at my watch and said, after 5. Yeah, let's go, Teddy said. But let's make camp before dark, so that we can see to get wood and stuff. I'm getting hungry too. We'll stop at 6:30, Chris promised. Okay with you guys? It was. We started to walk again, along the stones beside the tracks. Soon the river was so far behind us that we couldn't even hear its sounds. We were slapping insects off our backs and necks. Vern and Teddy were up in front, deep in conversation about TV shows. Chris was next to me, hands in his pockets, shirts slapping against his knees. I've got some Winstons, he said. One each for after supper. Yeah? That's great. That's when a cigarette tastes best, Chris said, after supper. Right. We walked in silence for a while and then he asked, Are you ready for school? I guess so. But whoever was ready. You got a little excited about going back and seeing your friends. You were curious about your new teachers, what they would be like. In a strange way, you couldn't even get excited about the long, boring lessons, because by the time the summer holidays were nearly over, you sometimes get bored enough to believe you could learn something at school. But summer boredom was nothing like the school boredom that always started by the end of the second week, and by the beginning of the third week. You were busy with the really important stuff. Could you hit Sticky Fisk in the back of the head with a paper bullet while the teacher was writing the capital cities of South America on the blackboard? Could you get a good loud noise of the surface of your desk if your hands were really sweaty? How many girls would let you feel their asses during lunch hour? This is higher education, man. You know what, Gordy? Chris went on. By next June, It'll be all over between us. What are you talking about? Why would that happen? Because me and Teddy and Vern will be doing different courses from you. You'll be on the college courses. we'll be on the shop courses, making bird houses and pots and stuff like that. You meet a lot of new guys, clever guys, like you. That's just the way it goes, Gordy. I'll meet a lot of pussies, you mean? I said. He held my arm. No, man, don't say that. Don't even think that. You know how you tell stories sometimes? You've got a million stories inside you, and you can just sit there and tell one to us. Vern and Teddy may not always understand your stories, but those guys on the college courses will understand them. It doesn't matter about the stories. I'm not talking courses with a lot of pussies. I'm not taking courses, yeah. If you don't, you're a fool. Why is it foolish to want to be with your friends? He looked at me thoughtfully, as if deciding whether to tell me something. We had slowed down. Vern and Teddy were almost half a mile in front. The sun, which was lower now, came at us through the trees overhead in broken columns of light and turned everything gold. It's foolish if your friends can drag you down, Chris said finally. I know about you and your parents. They don't care about you. Your big brother was the only one they cared about. It's like my dad. It was when Dave went to prison that he started hitting us and all. Your dad doesn't hit you, but maybe that's even worse. He put you to sleep. If you told him you were joining the shop courses. Do you know what he'll do? He turned to the next page in his newspaper and said, That's nice, Gordon. Would you ask your mother what's for dinner? And don't try to tell me I'm wrong. I've met him. I didn't try to tell him he was wrong. It's a bit frightening to find out that someone else, even a friend, knows just how things are with you. You're still young, Gordy. Thanks, Dad. I wish I was your dad, he said angrily. If I was, you wouldn't talk about taking stupid shop courses. It's as if God gave you something, all those stories, and said, Here you are, try not to lose it. But children lose everything unless somebody is there to help them. And if your parents are too stupid to do it, maybe I ought to. He looked like he was expecting me to try to hit him. His face was unhappy in the late afternoon light. He had broken the unwritten rule. You could say what you liked to a guy about himself, but never say a bad word about his parents. If you stay with us just because you don't want to lose the gang, Chris went on, you'll turn into just another guy with no good use for his brains, except to make clever, cruel remarks about other people. And you'll never escape Castle Rock. You'll think it's important to have the right kind of car and then the right girl. And then you'll get married and work in the factory or some shoe shop forever. Is that what you want? Chris Chambers was 12 when he said all that to me. But something in his face as he spoke was older, ageless. It was as if he had lived that whole life already, and his words made me frightened. He understood the loser's life so well. He seemed to know what I was thinking. I know what people think of my family in this town. Nobody even asked me if I took the milk money that time. Did you take it? I asked. I had never asked him before, and if you had told me, I even wouldn't have called you crazy. The words came out like dry bullet. Yeah, he said tiredly. Yeah, I took it. He was silent for a moment. You know I took it. Teddy knew. Everybody knew. Even Vern knew, I think. I started to deny it and then closed my mouth. He was right. I had argued with my parents that a person was innocent until proven guilty. But deep inside, I had known the truth. Then maybe I was sorry and tried to give it back, Chris said. I stared at him. You tried to give it back? Maybe, he said. Just maybe. And maybe I took it too old. Mr. Simmons and told her. Gave her all the money. And maybe I wasn't allowed back at school for 2 weeks anyway, because the money still never appeared. And maybe the next week, Mrs. Simmons had this new skirt on when she came to school. I stared at Chris, speechless with horror. He smiled at me, but it was a tight, terrible smile which never touched his eyes. Just maybe, he said, but I remember the new skirt. Chris, how much was that money? Almost $7. Christ, I whispered. But if I stole the money and then Mrs. Simmons stole it from me, and if I told anyone, what would you think would happen? Who would believe me? Me, Chris Chambers? Younger brother of Dave Chambers and Eyeball Chambers? No one would believe it, I whispered. Jesus Christ. I never thought that a teacher... Oh hell, who cares anyway? Why am I even talking about it? He wiped an arm angrily across his eyes and realized he almost started crying. Chris, I said, why don't you go into college courses? You're clever enough. The teachers decide all that in the school office. All they care about is whether you behave yourself in school and what the town thinks of your family. They don't want you to infect their top college course pupils, the ones from the big houses on the hills. I don't know if I could do it, but I might try, because I want to get out of Castle Rock and go to college and never see my father or my brothers again. I want to go somewhere where nobody knows me and people don't have bad ideas about me before I even done anything. But I don't know if I can do it. Why not? People drag you down. Who? I asked, thinking he must mean the teachers, or his brother Eyeball, or maybe his parents. But he said, your friends drag you down, Gordy. Don't you know that? He pointed at Vern and Teddy, who were standing and waiting for us to catch up. They were laughing about something. Your friends do. They're like drowning guys who are holding on to your legs. You can't save them. You can only drown with them. Come on, guys, Vern shouted. Don't be so slow. Yes, coming, Chris called, and before I could see anything else, he began to run. But he caught up to them before I could catch up to him. And that is the end of chapter 13. The Loser's Life. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.